My name is Hannah, and I went from the classroom to 240 to help teachers pass their certification exams. And today, I'm going to help you. This video is going to prepare you for the Praxis Core Writing exam. That's test code 5723. This video is going to cover three things: what's on the test and how it's organized, the most likely concepts that will be on the test, and at the end, we'll look at a few practice questions. Ready? Let's go. The Praxis Core Writing exam consists of two overarching categories. They are text types, purpose, and production, and language and research skills for writing. Category 1 is worth 60% of your total score, and Category 2 is worth 40%. For this exam, you'll answer 40 selected response questions. These are like multiple choice, and two constructed response questions, or CRQs for short. Those are essay questions. While we're on the subject, let's go ahead and talk about those CRQs now. The CRQs are housed under Category 1. You'll have two different essay questions to respond to. The argumentative essay asks you to draw from personal experience or opinion in support of a specific claim, using examples to support your argument. The source-based essay, also known as informative or explanatory essay, asks you to draw information from two provided texts in order to identify and examine both sides of a given issue. In short, in the argumentative, you'll pick a side. In the source-based, you won't. These are equally weighted, and you're given 30 minutes for each. Your audience is made up of experienced teachers, so ensure your writing is targeted to educated adults, not students. Let's go over the argumentative first. You will be given an opinionated statement. Then, you will produce an essay in which you use evidence and details to agree or disagree with that statement. For example, you could be presented with a prompt that argues that animal testing is cruel and should be banned. Notice that this prompt supports a clear position. It is up to you to decide whether or not you agree with that position and then clearly articulate your stance in writing. A big tip here is to write a strong thesis statement. It's pretty much the most important sentence in an argumentative essay. Your thesis should communicate the focus of the essay and your rationales or reasons that will support the focus, be your point of view, be a statement, never written as a question, and be clear and direct. You can follow this formula: your stance, because, rationale 1, and rationale 2. For example, in response to that prompt about animal testing, your thesis statement could be, I agree with the statement that animal testing should be banned because it causes pain and suffering, and technological advances have created better alternatives. Then each of those reasons you stated in your thesis will become a focus of a body paragraph. The best way to prepare for this is to respond to a practice prompt. I've got one for you right now. Here's your prompt. You can pause to think about how you'd answer or even practice writing a thesis statement. Now, I'll show you a model response. For this example, I'm going to decide to agree with the prompt. But don't worry, you won't be graded on which side you take. It's how you compose and organize your argument that matters. Here's my thesis statement. Notice that I've clearly taken a stance, supported it with one rationale, which will become the focus of my first body paragraph, and a second rationale, which will be what my second body paragraph is all about. Here's how I fleshed that out into a complete essay. I added supporting details to explain each rationale, and I ended with a brief closing paragraph that restated or summarized my position in different words. So, that takes care of the argumentative essay. Now it's time to talk about the source-based essay. You're going to get two passages about the same topic. You'll need to summarize the concerns expressed in both of those passages. For example, you may be presented with two passages that address the cost of oil. You will read the two passages and identify the main points presented in them. And you still won't pick a side. You just need to show that you can pick out the key information from readings and communicate it clearly. That's not so bad, right? We don't have time to do a practice source-based essay in this video, but I do have one really important tip for you. And don't worry, the 240 study guide has plenty of practice prompts for you, with model answers to review. There's a link to subscribe in the description. But here's that important tip. When you're writing about the points made in each passage, you'll want to include a few examples or quotations from the passage in your essay. This means you'll need citations. You don't need to worry about proper MLA citation, but you do need to show that you know how to avoid plagiarism. Here's what to do. If you're including the actual wording of a phrase or sentence from the passage, put it in quotation marks. Write in your sentence which author or passage the quote is coming from. Like this example. If one of the given passages was titled Global Warming Won't Wait for Us, and the author's last name was Ryan, I could write, in her article, Global Warming Won't Wait for Us, Ryan recalled that the experience was terrifying yet eye-opening. I clearly stated where I got that quote from. Another option is to just use the quotation and put the author's name at the end of the sentence in parentheses, like this. It doesn't matter which way you do it, and you can use both throughout your essay. As long as you try to show where the quote is coming from, you'll be good to go. And that's the source-based essay. Now you know what to expect for the CRQ section. With that out of the way, let's get into the selected response portion of the Praxis Core Writing exam. In addition to the 2 CRQs, Category 1 also includes between 6 and 12 selected response questions. For these, you'll need to recognize ways to strengthen a passage through revising and editing. And good news, I have some tips in my back pocket about all of this. Reorganize to create a logical flow. Check the writing to ensure that sentences and paragraphs build on each other in the best order. For example, in a chronological text, all information should be in order by date. Also, make sure to remove details that do not support the main idea. For example, a paragraph discussing the invention of the smallpox vaccine might be confused by details about the invention of antibiotics. Remove details that are relevant but distract from the main idea. If the entire paragraph was about sharks as ocean predators, a sentence about the movie Jaws would most likely be an unnecessary supporting detail, even though it seems on topic. Let's move on to Category 2. The language and research skills for writing is where the majority of your selected response questions will come from. Expect to see between 28 and 34. Language skills accounts for the bulk of this category. You'll correct errors in sentences regarding grammar, including adjectives, adverbs, and all kinds of pronoun topics like pronoun antecedent agreement, to name one, subject-verbs agreement, and verb tense. Structure, including errors in the placement of phrases and clauses, misplaced and dangling modifiers, and errors in the use of coordinating and subordinating conjunctions, and word choice, including errors in the use of idiomatic expressions, commonly confused words, and redundancy. Oh, and if a sentence doesn't have errors involving any of those things, you'll have to know how to recognize that too. Now, that may sound like a lot, because it is, but you don't need to worry. You just need to study, and 240 has you covered. Let's take a peek inside the study guide to hear more info about one of the concepts I threw out earlier: modifiers.
You may need to work with modifiers. A modifier is a word, phrase, or clause that adds emphasis, explanation, or detail to a sentence. Modifiers can be misplaced or dangling. A misplaced modifier is in the wrong place in the sentence. The child ate a cold plate of spaghetti for lunch. Cold modifies plate in this sentence. The child ate a plate of cold spaghetti for lunch. Now, cold modifies spaghetti. Placement matters.
I just love our videos. Before we see some practice questions, let's discuss the other key concept in this category: research skills. You'll need to recognize appropriate research skills, including assessing credibility of sources, recognizing elements of a citation, recognizing effective strategies for a particular task, and evaluating the relevance of information. Let's dig into credible sources. Credible sources are ones that the reader can trust. The information presented in them can be backed up with evidence. To determine whether or not a source is credible, ask yourself: who, what, where, and when? Who wrote it? Determine whether or not the author has a known agenda or bias. What are the key claims? Make sure there's evidence provided to support them. Where is the source from? Credible sources are typically from well-known, reputable publications. And when was it written? The information could potentially be outdated by more current research. Peer-reviewed publications are some of the most credible out there. Peer review is the evaluation of new work by other experts in the field before it is published. This process ensures the quality and validity of the source, and that takes care of some of the essential information from both categories. Now that we've gone over some of the big concepts from Praxis Core Writing, let's look at some practice selected response questions to show you how those concepts can appear on the test. If you want a lot of practice questions, you can click the free practice test below. At the end, you get a score report on how well you did on the test. Now for questions. Remember way back when we talked about revising passages? Let's look at how that is reflected in a question. We'll have to read a passage first for this one. Pause the video and take a moment to read. Okay, so now we need to decide what change could improve the logical order of the paragraph. Sentence 4 marks a transition between the time that came before and the time that came after. So this is our best choice. We should move sentence 4 so that it comes after sentence 7. Let's use our language skills and take a look at a sentence to see what kind of correction it needs. It's cold outside. Put on a coat so you don't get frostbite. Now, I have to admit, at first I thought there was no error in this sentence, but with the immediate answer feedback feature in the study guide, I can see I need to correct my misconception and try again. This sentence does contain an error, and it's here in choice B. This is an example of a comma splice, where two independent clauses are put together by a comma when they should be connected by a semicolon, a period, or a conjunction. All right, now for a research question. In the citation above, the inclusion of United States Holocaust Memorial Museum as the first item listed tells us this is the answer we want. When an individual author is not known, the organization can be used in its place for citation purposes. Now, that's just a small sliver of practice questions to give you an idea about how these concepts are assessed on the test. There is still plenty more to learn. If you really want to make sure you're prepared for the Praxis Core Writing exam, take the next step and subscribe to the 240 Study Guide. It has hours of videos, so you can watch and listen while doing chores. It is test aligned with hundreds of practice questions so you know precisely what you need to study. And it has the money back guarantee. So click the link below right now to get started.